Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Addicted to Success podcast. I'm here today with one of my amazing friends by the name of Tony Gaskins. I don't know if you've seen him. He's all over Facebook. He's all over Instagram. He is an incredible speaker. I had the opportunity to see him live. It would have been about 4.5 to 5 years ago. He was one of the first guys I interviewed for the Addicted to Success TV. And he absolutely rocked out in that interview. And I'm so excited to see where Tony is right now because he's been making some major moves working with the NBA and speaking all over the world. And his new book, The Dream Chaser, has just come out. So make sure you get your hands on that. But before we get into all that, Tony, welcome to the Addicted to Success podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Joel. Glad to be here.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. So just to give people an understanding of why you've chosen this as your passion, why you go all in on coaching others, and why you love being an entrepreneur, how did this start for you, just in a nutshell, and what are you doing with it today?
It started when I was 22, and I was pushed into purpose. I always tell people that my pain birthed my purpose. Because where I grew up, we had three options. You can be overworked and underpaid like your parents. You can be a pro athlete like Tracy McGrady. I'm from the home of Tracy McGrady, former NBA superstar. Or you can be a drug dealer like your cousins. And so those were the three options that I saw. And I tried all three. I tried to be a pro athlete, and then I tried to get a degree, and then I was a drug dealer. And so I was searching for myself, bouncing around. And I was lost, one of the lost youth, coming from the inner city, just that backwards mindset. And then at 21, I met my wife, and she pushed me to another level because she wouldn't allow me to be average. She wouldn't allow me to succumb to the pressures of the world and just, sell myself short. And that's when I tapped into my gift as a writer. I had written poetry all my life because I was quiet. And I started writing, and I just started pushing my book relentlessly. Just every day I was pitching myself to Oprah, to Tyra Banks, to CNN, every outlet I could think of that I had knowledge of, I was pitching myself. And I just wanted to use my wisdom, the little that I had, just to teach. So from everything that I learned, I wanted to teach.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. When I think of you, because I remember you and I were having a conversation about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, and the word relentless came up quite often. And I think it was the thoughts that I had. And also I think you said it a couple times. It's kind of like your mantra, like what you live by, being relentless, right? In a relentless pursuit for success. And another thing that I've picked up on lately is just from our conversation before is that you are also self-reliant. And I love that you've gone the route of building the business a lot by yourself, because I did that with Addicted to Success. For the first few years, I was like a one-man band. And so for you, you've amassed millions. You're netting $1 million a year or so, and from your coaching and speaking and your books. And you've done a lot of that just by yourself. So I think there's this common myth that everybody needs to have the dream team or 10 or 20 or 30 people until they can even see some form of business success or financial success. So yeah, man, you're a great example of running by yourself and making it happen. What would your advice be there for people that are struggling to be self-reliant?
Right. Well, I would say be self-reliant only if you have to. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say necessarily choose it. But for me, coming where I'm from, I had no mentors. There was no one who had been where I was trying to go. There was no authors, no world-renowned speakers. I couldn't reach those people. I could talk to athletes. I could talk to Tracy McGrady, but I wasn't going to go to the NBA. He talked to me about money. He talked to me about women. So I got some insight. But when it came to building a team, it just wasn't something that I was able to do. I mean, a lot of people had a crab in the barrel mentality. Nobody really thought you could make it out. Nobody, when I wrote my book, nobody jumped behind me and supported me and said, hey, let me be your manager. Let me be your assistant. Let me help you push this thing, because nobody saw me making it out. And so I was working alone. My wife supported me and she pushed me. And I just started to build. I was everything. I have 17 email addresses. And I run them all, I run them all. And I was my booking agent under a different name. I was my publicist under a different name. I was my coaching assistant, the person who books my coaching sessions under a different name. I was my virtual assistant under a different name. I started 8 companies. I started them all. I ran them all. And I still have 6 today. One of is my wife's, a management company. The other 5 are mine. And I ran them all by myself. And it was just this year, I believe it was, in 2016, that I hired my first staff, like full-time staff person, young man with a master's degree. I ended up having to part ways after 4 months with him. And just hired another young lady who's kind of doing just all the odds and ends. But since 2007, what's that, 9 years, I was working alone. And what I found is that a lot of people were out here just to take money, They just wanted a paycheck, but they didn't care as much about your brand as you care. And they wouldn't work as hard as you'll work. So I'd rather do it myself until I can't do it myself anymore.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. So, look, man, you've been in this game for, let's say, 9 years, right? 9 years or so,
Right.
10 years, getting close to 10 years. You told me just before this call that you can write literally a whole book in, a week?
Right.
I mean, that's insane. I'm at the 5.5, 6 year mark. What advice would you give to me, looking back on where you were around that mark? Like, what is something, if you're an aspiring speaker, coach, author that's listening to this interview, because we have a lot of them that listen to the Addicted to Success podcast, what would your advice be when it comes to building your business out and building your brand too?
Right. Man, for mine, I guess it's kind of unconventional. It's non-traditional. And I believe in building from the inside out. A lot of people teach, that you have to read a book a day, a book a week, or book a month. I didn't read a book until 2015. I started when I was in 2007. I didn't read a book until 2015. And the reason why is because I didn't want to implement anyone else's strategy. I didn't want to build someone else's ride. I didn't want to do what someone else created with their mind. I didn't want to be a replica or a duplicate. I wanted to be an original. And I also wanted to create a blueprint that I could sustain. Because if I come to Joel and I get all of your knowledge and I pay $10,000 to go to your 5-day seminar and I get all of your knowledge, because it came from you, I may not know how to implement what you just taught me. And then if I implement what you did teach me, I'm going to reach a plateau and I'm going to need you again. And then what about when you die off and you're gone and I'm still pushing? Who do I go to? Because now I've built someone else's system that doesn't have my fingerprint, that I don't have the blueprint for, that I can't build up, tear down, and build again. So I built the business that made sense to me. I drowned out all noise. I didn't listen to anybody. I didn't read anybody. I wrapped my mind around what I could produce. And then after I built the foundation, that's when I opened my mind to other speakers. And that's when I let in Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and C.S. Lewis and Earl Nightingale and Tony Robbins and Les Brown. That's when I let those other guys in to kind of be the icing on the cake, to be the dressings on my house that I had built. But and even with that, I keep it minimal. I keep it very minimal because I believe we're all such dynamic beings, that we are all created so wonderfully that we can produce things that the human mind can't conceive from the outside looking in, if we just look within and we produce from the inside out. So that's been my model, man. And I tried to build a model that other people have built the same model, but they didn't copy me and I didn't copy them. It just goes to show the power of the human mind.
Yeah. It's funny, man, because you've worked that way, because you know that it's about you being unique and having your own gifts to share with the world. That's why companies like the NBA come to you, for you to step in and coach players in the NBA. So
right.
Tell me, because you've worked with some incredible athletes as like a mindset coach and a life coach, right?
Right.
What do you feel has been the most powerful experience with working with an NBA player? From your memory, like what has really stood out? Even a couple lessons, if you have a couple.
I think for me, I guess I take something a little different from it. I realize that even though they are superstars and they make millions of dollars, they struggle just like broke people. You know, they struggle from the same issues: relationship problems, self-esteem problems, confidence. They're they're insecure as anybody else. You
Yeah.
know, they're we think that they just have really strong minds and just this crazy will to be amazing, when 9 out of 10 times they're just physically gifted. Their mind is no stronger than yours or mine. You know, they work no harder than you and I. And so for me, I took a different approach. And instead of looking up at them, I just look directly at them. And I go to the heart. You know, I talk to the heart. I don't think about the sport. I talk to them about as a man, you know, or as a woman. And I've coached probably over 500 pro athletes. I've been working with the NBA and the Players Association since 2010. Since I was 26 years old, I've been a speaker, speaking to the rookies that get drafted every year. And then also working with NFL players, with MLB players, with soccer players, with boxers, across the board. And my thing is not so much the sport. I let other people handle, you know, the mental skills for on the court, on the field performance. I help them get their life off the field right. I help them work on their relationship, work on their their integrity, who they are as a person, help them build a brand outside of the sport. I want to affirm them as a human being because they've only been affirmed as an athlete. So that's my approach to it. For me, it's not even about performance. And I tell them, if you learn how to be a man, basketball is easy. If you learn how to be a man, football is easy. You know, if you get the intangibles, you know, and so that's what I'm working with them on mostly.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that. On that note about being a man, what do you believe it takes in this day and age to be a real man? Because I think this is a big problem for men. They have the wrong idea of what it means to be a man to their woman, as a man showing up in this world for their kids, as a man showing up in their business even. What does it take to be a real man?
Right. If I had to put it in a nutshell, I would say a real man accepts full responsibility for his life and for his actions. So what that means is everything that he produces, his children, his business, he accepts full responsibility for that. And anything that happens to him, he places no blame for what happened, but instead he accepts responsibility for how he's going to respond to it. So today we have men not loving their woman, walking away from a good woman, not raising their children. We have men not accepting responsibility for their actions as a person and how their actions impact others. And that's where I had to change my life, you know, with my actions and accepting full responsibility. And for me, it started with loving my wife. You know, when I look at the first man who was ever created, if you believe like that, that's how I believe that Adam was the first man. One of his first commandments was, you know, to love Eve. You know, he was given Eve right after he was given dominion of the earth. And so she was a vital part of his life, that woman, and him having to love, protect, and provide. You know, things went wrong with the apple, but I look at that as a sign to me, you know, saying that I have to lay down my life for my woman. I have to love her if she's a good woman. And then I have to take care of the kids that I produce. And I have to be responsible for my actions. And so at 23 years old, I stopped going to the club. I stopped cursing. I didn't gamble. I took care of my behind the scenes. I didn't watch pornography. I didn't cheat on my wife. Everything that I saw the men around me fall victim to and became a prey of, I cut everything out. And for me, success is not how much money you make. We hear about people talking about, oh, I make 50 million a year. I was just at a speaking at Steve Harvey's thing, and I think he makes, nearly $200 million a year. I mean,
Whoa.
like from one,
Wow.
I saw an article from one show, from one of his TV shows. I think the Steve Harvey show. He makes $85 million a year, just from that one TV show, and he has like 3 or 4, and he has a radio show, and he has book selling, and he does speaking engagements, $150,000 a pop, in the States. So when I look at that type of money and I see that's my trajectory, none of that means anything to me if a man does not treat his wife right, and if he does not set a good example for his children, and if he's not responsible for his actions.
Yeah.
And so for me, that is the type of success that I'm addicted to.
Amen, brother. Amen. I feel you on every level. I agree 100% with that. Yeah. Commitment, man. It's commitment, and not falling for the material things, falling for what's real. And what's interesting, so many people that I interview on this podcast, their parting advice, you Tony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk and Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and all these amazing people, and they're incredible in their fields. It all goes back to love. It's about love and being of value and giving back and connecting. And that's at the core. And these people make hundreds of millions of dollars, so yeah, it's like, don't forget that, right? That's the thing.
Right.
Don't forget it. Yeah. It's easy to get distracted by the shiny objects.
Right. If you have love and if you have the things that money can't buy, then you can produce any amount of money.
Yes.
But if you don't have those things, no amount of money you make can buy those things.
Yeah.
So you have to get it from the inside out. And I think the successful individuals like the ones you just named, they found the secret, and they started to build, from the inside out. And I think that's where the magic happens, man.
Hell yeah. So your new book, The Dream Chaser, is out. What is your favorite part of that book?
You know what? And it's crazy. I'm still working. I wrote a chapter that got deleted, and that was my last chapter because the book was too long. and it was actually about, loving my wife. And that was my favorite. And I know that sounds corny to a lot of men because we're so focused on the grind and business and making money. But that was my favorite. Other than that, I have another chapter that was talking about the one-man show. And to me, man, that's what I'm most proud of, and it's probably something that people would say you shouldn't be proud of that, being a one-man show. But that's what I'm most proud of, man, that I didn't have a team, that I didn't have, my father wasn't an entrepreneur, that I didn't have a mentor. And that's what I'm most proud of, that I got it out of the mud. That's the term we use where I'm from. I come from the mud, from the bottom to the top, and did not. I mean, I reached out to guys, I remember writing Gary Vaynerchuk, he responded a couple times and gave me some jewels.
Yeah.
I reached out to a couple other, big guys, but it wasn't a lot of people that I could talk to or get close to. And so I wrote about being, the one-man show and building from the ground up. And I created over 40 streams of income. The way I count my income, I count my income based on every company that's writing me a check. So even with my book, I break it down into at least a minimum of 4 streams of income because I count Barnes and Nobles as a stream, Amazon as a stream, Kindle as a stream, and the Nook as a stream. I count them all as streams. And the reason why I do that, even though they all are just considered one stream, is to create an abundant mindset.
So you said 40 streams of income?
Yeah, over 40 streams of income.
That's wild, brother.
But to be honest with you, though, I mean, it's kind of like the same thing Tony Robbins is doing, the same thing Russell Simmons is doing, just putting a product in every. So I had funds coming from an app, my life coaching app, which we're redoing right now. Then I had Audio, iTunes, audio CDs was another stream. Coaching, I break down my coaching into different streams. Business coaching is one, relationship coaching is another, author consulting is another, then ghostwriting is another. Then each book is a real asset. Just like buying a house, a book is a real asset. So if each book generates $5,000 a month, when I get 8 books, then I'm at $40,000 a month. So I count my streams literally, and break them down to where even one book can be 4 or more streams. And
let me ask you this real quick. So you're saying around 5,000 a month, and that would be a self-published book, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and so the trade-off would be if you self-publish, you're gonna have to market it yourself, but you're taking a lot on the front end. This is for the listeners, right? If they don't understand it, and then obviously if you go through a traditional publisher, you might get a bit more exposure, and because you're in the bookstores, and you might get more speaking opportunities, but you're not getting that much really on the front end. A lot of it's going back to the advance, or you're getting like $1 a book, right?
Right. See, with the self-publishing, the way I do it, it costs me about $1,500, to produce the book. So it's really nothing. It's no real investment because everything today is made so easy. So like a New York Times best-selling cover, that book cover design, you can get that for $50 on freelancer.com or fiverr.com. It's nothing major about that design. People doing it in their sleep. Editing, editors, my editor charges $3 a page, and she's a high ranking editor, but where most editors charge $10, $15, $20 a page, their editing is no better, than mine, who charges $3 a page. It's just that it's a new venture for her. I found someone who was young and hungry. Formatting, I mean, that's a few $100s. It's $125, for print book, and an ebook. You combine, you're paying around $260 for formatting the book. So after that, and you publish it through Create Space, which is Amazon's company, is free. It's free to publish. You can get your own ISBN for $10 through them. So at the end of the day, the average number that I was helping my clients and my self-published books, it came to around $1,100. And through every avenue except for Barnes and Nobles, the book through Amazon, the book would make about $6 a book. Whereas with traditional publishers, I got a guy who wrote a book, and with a traditional publisher, got a huge advance, 6-figure advance, but he told me his royalty per book is 30 cents a book. And so it's no money. And then everybody who goes traditional, even the agents and the lawyers who help do the deal, they was telling me, hey, don't go traditional. They was like, it's not worth it. Like I have a client who got a 7-figure deal, advance, and it still wasn't worth it. Like the deal still wasn't worth it. So it's like, it's not, traditional publishing isn't set up for the author to win off of the book. Yeah. You have to be passionate about it. You got to want to give back, and you're going to make a little money. But if you're really trying to make money, it's not going to be money to you. Mm-hmm. And it's the ancillary things around the book, the speaking, the coaching, the consulting. For me, I ghostwrite. So I ghostwrite at $20,000 per book. Being that I write a book in 3 days, if I wanted to, I can ghostwrite a book every week, And so that's where I generate other income. So for me, my self-published book, when I'm promoting it, they would make me $10,000 a month. I can make $10,000 a month per book when I'm promoting it. Without promoting it, then it's just organic sales, so you may be around $2,000 to $5,000 a month just off organic sales, just from social media following and posting tweets and quotes. Yeah. Self-publishing, make way more money if you have a following. Traditional publishing is more like being a cool kid. It's like having a Letterman jacket, you get the respect, you can go on Oprah or Good Morning America and they'll let you on because you have a real publisher, a traditional publisher behind you, because that's how the system is set up. You scratch mine, I'll scratch yours. Scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. But self-publishing, they don't really respect it as much, because you got it from the mud. You did it on your own. You did something that anybody can do, so to speak. So, it's business, it's politics, but I got on Tyra Banks back in the day in 2009, and they showed my self-published book to the world. So that was a globally televised show. Right after I went on Oprah, Oprah didn't show my book to the world. They ordered it from my self-publisher, internet publisher, and they read it. The producer read it, but they didn't show it for whatever reason. I mean, what is business?
That would have been huge if they did. You would have got a lot more sales, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, oh
so,
yeah.
so this is a question I really want to ask you because I feel like so many people will be interested in this. If you don't mind me asking you, what would your advice be around reaching out to these amazing outlets, like reaching out to your Oprah Winfrey's or your Tyra Banks? Because I know you did a lot of that by yourself. Right? So how would you approach someone? Like, what has worked for you in the past to get on these big media platforms?
Right. Well, I'll tell you this: when you're working by yourself, you get everything, and you don't have money. You get everything you can for free. And so, one thing I learned about the system, based on the marketing that people do, is they give you all their best content for free, and then at the end they upsell you with this huge price, but they really give you all the same stuff over again with just a little bit more. So, because I didn't have any money, I was, coming from the bottom. I was on free teleseminars. And so I was getting these tips and tools. And one of the tools that I got was on pitching, and one of the terms they use is timely pitches. And so what I did is when something happens in the media, in the current news that relates to something that you write on in your book or that you speak on your blog, you can pitch yourself as an expert, so to speak. Huh. And it has to be short and sweet. You have to get right to the point. So I called it the perfect pitch, so that if you're a producer and you're reading your emails, the pitches that's coming in, mine was like no more than 7 sentences. It was like a paragraph, and it was straight to the point. So that first sentence is almost like you're jumping into the middle of a poem or the middle of a very juicy story. And so you jump right in instead of, "Hello, how are you doing? My name is Tony Gaskins. I'm from Arbondale, Florida." Instead of that traditional, it jumps right in, and then I struck her again and there was blood. So now you're like, wow, what in the heck is going on? Or I was struck again and blood was dripping from my nose. The next thing I realize, I look up and I just seen flashing lights. So now you're in the middle of this story and you're like, what in the heck is going on? They're reading it, and let's say it's dealing with crime and there's a lot of shooting and killing in Chicago, and you're talking about, you used to be in that lifestyle. Now all of a sudden, when everybody wants to touch on the shooting and killing in Chicago, they call you because you just wrote in with a timely pitch. And it was short, it was sweet, it was to the point, it was engaging. It wasn't an essay, it wasn't long and drawn out like you're writing an autobiography. And so that became the secret, man, the pitch. And the thing about it is they're in the business to do business. They're in the business to entertain. So they need you more than you need them, or they need you just as much as you need them. And there's 365 days in a year, and inside of those 365 days in a year, there's 5-6 segments that they have to fill. So you do 365 times 5, it's a lot of room for a lot of people. And all you have to do is get one of those segments. And so that's how I pitch myself, because I had been a toxic lover, in college, a toxic, controlling lover, young and dumb, doing what I saw men do growing up. And Chris Brown and Rihanna happened, so that incident happened with them in 2009. And I pitched right on the heels of that, Tony Gaskins. And I wrote in and said, I used to be Chris Brown. Now, I had never done anything to that level. It was never that bad. It was never any police, any black eyes or bust lips. Yeah. But, it's the media. They sensationalize things. So I sensationalized a little bit. And I said, I was Chris Brown. But basically what I was saying, I was a toxic, controlling boyfriend at his age too. And I told a story from college. And that next week, or maybe it was just a few days later, Oprah's producer called me and said, "Hey, we read your story. We want you to come in and be a guest on the show." It was a live airing, so it never re-aired, so I didn't have to relive it over and over and over, of me bringing my skeletons out of the closet of being a punk, and a grown boy, as I call it. And then in the in the limo after the shoot, me and my wife was in the limo. She was rubbing on my legs. She was like, "Oh, you're such a man. You're so amazing," because she was proud of me for owning up to being a punk, a grown boy in my past. It was in a relationship before her,
Yeah.
and so she got the good version of me, but I was talking about the old version, the bad version, and and right then it just hit me to write Tyra Banks. So I used another tactic, to where I piggyback, because when you do one form of media,
Yeah.
you can piggyback off of that because it's monkey see, monkey do. And so I wrote Tyra Banks and said, I wrote the producer who I had been in touch with, because they had pitched me some other circus shows because they just thought I was a hungry kid who wanted to be famous. They didn't realize that I was a kid that wanted to live a life of purpose. I didn't want to be just successful. I wanted to be significant. And so they had pitched me a couple of little, monkey shows, and I turned them down. I was like, no, that's not me. I'm not just trying to get on TV. There's a method to the madness. And so I wrote him and I said, hey, did you see me on Oprah? And he wrote back, hey, Tony, we did see you on Oprah and you were amazing. And we would like you to come on our show as a guest expert with your book in hand. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
So that was the secret, man. That's how I did it. And the reason why I say all of that, I say that to say I never took a PR class and I never had a PR agent. I've never paid a PR agency a dime. But I got on Oprah and Tyra Banks. Then CNN picked up the story from Oprah and they showed it. Then I went on the 700 Club, which TBN, the largest, Christian broadcasting network. And then I did local media, local newspapers, did all the major blogs, all this on my own, just putting one foot in front of the other, thinking logically and practically, and just making it happen regardless of the circumstances or the odds.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's a dream chaser right there. Now I know why you're writing a book on it, because that's exactly who you are. I love that. That's a great example. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing that. That's amazing. So, Tony, if you could ask yourself one powerful question, just one powerful question, what would that question be and what would your answer be to that question?
If I could ask myself one question. I don't know. I've never. I guess I don't ask myself questions.
You're busy asking everybody else questions as a coach. That's what you do, right?
Yeah. I guess I don't ask myself questions. I would ask myself something very simple, and that is, can you make it? Can I make it? And my answer would be very simple: yes. And I think that is the essence of life. Simplicity. If we make it as simple as possible, everything falls into place. But I think we want to be so profound and we want to be so deep. We want to be so complex that we end up getting stuck in the mud. But for me, I've made it off simplicity. Just keeping it simple, doing what I know how to do. To the extent of my knowledge, what I can control, what I can produce. Gaining other knowledge where I can, but if I can't use it, if I can't understand it, I throw it to the wayside, and I keep chugging along the best way I know how.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, Tony, it's funny. When we're asked questions, usually by default we go to, I don't know, or I'm not sure, just because of how our brain works, right?
Right.
And then the second question would be, well, I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would you say? And then you dig a little bit deeper and you find it, and you found it. It was great, man. I love that. I love seeing that process in action. It was awesome. Thanks for giving us the answer there.
Yeah. At least they know the interview isn't staged.
It wasn't staged at all. Yep. So, Tony, where can we pick up The Dream Chaser? Where is it?
It'll be available everywhere. Right now, it's in the pre-order stage, depending on when this is put up. But Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, Books A Million. It'll be on the ebook, all the e-readers. So anywhere you love to buy books from, you'll be able to get the book. Hopefully, Barnes & Nobles, will show me a lot of love, and hopefully get into the airports and everything.
I don't doubt it. I believe it'll be there. there's a lot of people that want to be dream chasers that are needing that budge, that are needing the pull to live out their vision and to live out their dreams. So it's great that you're leading the way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Tony, I'm going to leave you with this last question. And the question is, if you were to deliver your last 30-second speech to the world, what would that last 30 seconds sound like?
Man, I tell you what, that's another deep question. They need to give out an award for questions. But I tell you what, honestly, Joel, I can't even answer it, because the way I believe in the power of words, I don't want to speak that last speech into existence just yet. And I have never planned a speech. I always speak from the heart, and I cannot fathom what my heart will feel after seeing all that I will have seen before my last speech. So I think if I spoke that into existence, I would do a disservice to myself and to the people. So I would say now, just wait and see. Just wait and see. But I'm pretty sure it'll be something special. Excellent. But I'm hoping that's 80 years away.
And also, you know this, man. Actions speak louder than words. Like, you've lived that. So
yes.
Yeah. Yes. Powerful stuff. Tony, you're a legend. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your words of wisdom with the listeners. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, man. It's been awesome.
Anytime, brother. I'm looking forward to picking up your book too.
Awesome.
I'm putting in a pre-order right now. Thank you.
Thank you.